Hello, you lovely listeners. I'm Amy. Welcome to the Really Good Conversations podcast, where we will delve into the minds of the business people we have met in the process of launching our first card game. We will be uncovering their secrets to success, their biggest mistakes, and sharing the key lessons they have picked up en route. So, if you're looking for an engaging chinwag mixed with business insights and a good pinch of fun, you're in the right place. Let's have a really good conversation. Welcome to the Really Good Conversations podcast. Today I am joined in person with Tashi Dorjee, also known as the failed founder on his YouTube channel, who has ran a 10 million startup called 2Space for 6 years and has taken his entrepreneurial talents into the corporate executive world and currently holds a role at one of Australia's Fortune 500 companies. Welcome, Tashi.
Thank you. I'm really excited today. This is going to be awesome.
I know. Well, this is a real novelty, actually doing this in person in this awesome studio that you've organised, because normally, a lot of our guests are remotely. So This is exciting to be actually sat on the couch.
Well, it's really cool because I think what you're doing with this podcast is amazing. And a lot of companies, including the one I'm working at now, is catching on that content like this is really authentic and works, which is why they built one within their own office. So I'm really glad that you get to use it today.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Lots of fun gadgets in here. But firstly, let's talk about your journey, because I really am always amazed and intrigued by people who embark on the startup journey, what sort of person they are, what makes them tick. So can you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Sure. I think the interesting story really starts when I decided to take the punt or the leap to start one of my first businesses. And that decision wasn't an easy one, because a lot of the times especially when I meet founders today or young aspiring entrepreneurs, having the courage to start is one of the hardest things, right? So starting is almost half of the battle already won, because a lot of people don't even start, and then a potentially great idea or a learning experience just kind of withers away and dies. For me, I was very lucky, because when I decided to start one of my first businesses, which was 2Space, and that was the one where we turned restaurants into co-working spaces, I was fortunate enough to start it with a co-founder, right, who was someone who actually I met and did work with in a previous life and job where we were protecting rainforests in Southeast Asia. So there was a bit of history and camaraderie there. And because we almost started at the same time together, because we shared the idea, funnily enough, in a closed restaurant, and we both had that eureka aha moment, there was this certain level of shared excitement, but then also accountability very early on. So when we decided to do it, first of all, we didn't both quit our jobs and rush into starting that business. We almost set aside 20-30% of our brain power and our soul, like our energy, for the idea. And we kind of waited till we had enough momentum, because we weren't necessarily looking for capital or funding to get it to the stage where we could then start putting our full-time effort into it. So that experience was huge, because we thought it was just going to be, a short-term, let's give it a crack for a year or so. Turned out to be a 6-year journey, which I'm sure we can talk about in a bit more detail. But that was one of my first, I guess, experiences diving into the startup ecosystem in the startup world.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about 2Space. You've touched on it there. Tell us, what was 2Space?
Yeah, so long story short, we saw almost a double-sided marketplace that we could solve, which is why we got so excited, right? And we saw an opportunity where on one side of the marketplace, there were all these beautiful hospitality venues and restaurants that weren't getting the foot traffic that they deserved, but also were paying rent for the whole day, even though they would only open for trade in the evenings, like 6 p.m. So we were like, how can we help these venues monetize the space when they're not being used? So sharing economy kind of stuff when it wasn't that sexy, 10 years ago. And then there was another side of the marketplace where there were a bunch of people and aspiring entrepreneurs who would work from home because they couldn't afford an office or couldn't afford to even go to a co-working space. So we kind of figured, hey, if there was a way we could help both in a feasible and a flexible manner, not only are we solving two problems, but because we've got two customers that we can essentially pitch to and help help them with their own, whether it be monetization issues or access to space issues, we felt like we could really, grab that by the reins and make it work. So by identifying those two problems, we kind of merged them into the two-space offering, which was, hey, and just to help you visualize it, imagine one of your favorite restaurants that's beautiful, only opens at 6 p.m. in the evening, but is just sitting there from like the rest of the day. What would happen if I came in and essentially turned it into a co-working space or an office from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. because I fit it with Wi-Fi, I'd staff it with someone to help manage that community. And because we weren't paying rent, because the rent's already covered by the restaurant and we entered into a revenue share style model with them, I could actually provide memberships super cheap, right?
Yeah.
Accessible because I'm not offsetting a rent cost or whatnot. And if you can imagine working from there, and then when the restaurant opens for trade, you can order food. And then we were able to kind of like take these beautiful locations all around Australia and we expanded into Asia and kind of create this network of restaurant co-working spaces that were helping out owners, but also people who would work from home. And the coolest thing that we found out about it, aside from the model that we created, was that we actually had a bunch of companies start within the two-space ecosystem because there were founders who normally would work from home that suddenly got to work in these, community-rich areas and spaces. And because we built the technology to show you all the different people working from these different locations, they would purposefully go work in Manly or Bondi or in the city because they'd see, oh, there's a bunch of developers there or salespeople or that kind of stuff. So that, in essence, is the blabbery explanation of what it was.
Amazing. I can't help but think it sounds like it was a little bit ahead of its time because this was back in 2016-ish or earlier.
Yeah. It definitely was because I still remember pitching and trying to win the first handful of venues, all of the blockers. And I pitched to like 500 venues in the rain. I'd have to go knocking to these restaurants because you'd only get the owners an hour before they open for trade. And they would be saying stuff like, oh, but, these people in the space, what if they trip over and hurt themselves? Who's liable? What if they burn the space down? Can we control who uses it? All that kind of stuff because it hasn't been done before, which all made sense. And then even from a community perspective, when they come use it, there'd be a certain level of expectation of, oh, if I'm going to pay you, even if it's cheap for money, I want the best Wi-Fi in the world. I want printing facilities. I want somewhere ergonomical I can sit all day, which is not essentially what we were selling, right? But that was our fault because we positioned the product, I wouldn't say incorrectly, just early because we were learning founders ourselves because this was one of the first big companies we started because we thought it was as simple as affordable office space. That's our solution for people out there and a rev share model for restaurants. But then as that developed, we learned, hey, we're not selling office space. We're selling connectivity and community here, right? And we've just lowered the barrier of entry to that to something that's super affordable like a gym membership because you could use any of our locations and meet all these people and we'll connect you through tech. And then these venues such as restaurants which turned into hotels, we were like, hey, there's more value here than just sharing the money we make off the memberships with them. We're actually activating and marketing these locations because people would come back for dinner or lunch and be like, oh, have you checked out that really cool restaurant that we were working in? Let's go and have some food there. So all of that kind of stuff happened over the years, but I do feel like now it is very timely. So I implore anyone who wants to try it, I'll give you all of my IP, I'll give you everything because it kind of just withered away and died towards the end, unfortunately, even though we hit a 10 mil val. And I think it would do pretty well. I think it'd do pretty well right now.
Yeah. And for anyone listening, Tashi has an excellent YouTube channel that goes even deeper into the whole two-space journey. We're just obviously just touching on the background of what it is here. So I definitely encourage people to go and listen to some of those stories because, I loved it. Obviously, two-space is no longer.
Yeah.
But you refer to it as a fail.
Yeah.
So why, in your mind, is it a fail?
That's a really good question. It's hit me right in the field. That's why I'm actually I'm very rarely speechless. So I overall don't consider it a failure at all because, and the reason why I use the word failed founder is it's kind of like negative marketing or whatever you call it. It's like there's so many people out there, putting themselves out there as this super successful entrepreneur that's done all of these things. I think it's just quite authentic and real to be like, hey, I tried, I learned all these things. Technically it failed because it's still not around, but look at all that I've gained from it. So technically it failed because it's no longer around, and a big boo-boo because we hit a very high valuation and arguably it could have been the time to cash out and I'd be sitting on a beach somewhere or whatever like that. But towards the end, the very valuable lesson of burning out and not making the correct decisions is kind of why it just disappeared and into the ether. It ended up being acquired by another company right before COVID, so that was very fortunate. But, that didn't necessarily thrive or grow during COVID as well. So that's kind of why it got unwound eventually. I actually consider it a success for, I'd say, 3 really key reasons. And the third one is the most important one, but I'll say it for last. One is I don't even recognize myself anymore from the person I was before to after that experience, right? I think even just going through that whole startup journey of rejection, of failure, of grit, of pushing through, so valuable that you can't get that anywhere else. You just kind of get it through experience, and it allows you to make a lot of very measured decisions even today in whatever you do, whether it's another startup idea or a career thing. The second one is just it was a lot of fun. Like, even though I would never go back and do it again, it was fun. It was such a colorful chapter in my life. I wouldn't want to replace it. But at the same time, I find it very funny because I do get asked, hey, if you could go back in time and start again with everything you knew so you could crush it, would you do it? You'd think the answer would be yes, but it's a resounding no because it would still be hard. And I just didn't know what I was getting myself into back then. So it was kind of like a mistake. I did it, but it happened and I learned from it. But if I knew how hard it was going to be back then, I probably would never have done it. And then the third one is the huge success is that's how I met my wife.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, she was actually like one of our first members. Right?
Oh, fantastic.
Not that I'm like promoting, hey, you should date your customers and stuff like that. But she's definitely my rock. So I met her, over almost 7 years ago via that. And now we're happily married.
Wow, I did not know that. And I'm big believers, everything happens for a reason and being in sort of the right place, right time, all of that. So that is super awesome that came from that. What's your thoughts? Obviously, you've had this insight from To Space, the whole topic of investment when it comes to startup world. We chat to people, we know there's a big startup community here in Sydney. And at times the investment path perhaps seems quite glamorized. And a lot of businesses, we're going for investment. We need to go for investment. You guys didn't go for investment with To Space. What is your general thoughts on anyone who is considering going for investment?
Yeah, it's a prickly one, but an important one because I'm very much on the side of no investment, but I do appreciate certain ideas require investment, right? So it's definitely a case by case. But if you have a product offering or a service where you do require upfront investment, then I appreciate that. I understand it, but just understand that, even getting that money is a full-time job and it's going to take a lot. And what I do implore is that if you're a first-time founder, try and do something that doesn't require capital from someone else for one of your first ideas if you can help it, right? Yeah. Because as soon as you take money from someone, you're obligated to them completely. It's like, and you're right in the sense that I feel like it's completely sensationalized or romanticized, whether it be TV shows or communities or articles. I see a lot of people out there chasing funding. And I ask, what do you need it for? And then they talk about company valuations and all that kind of stuff. And it's this really vicious cycle where, for me, unless the only reason you're starting a business is you have an exit strategy in mind, one day I want to sell it for like X amount of $1 million, which is probably the wrong reason to start something in the first place. And you'll drop off at some point because your why or the reason you're doing for it is wrong. The only reason people care about valuations is because in their mind, they have to break off a piece to give someone to get some sort of funding. So the higher valuation you can get, the more money you get for giving away 5 or 10% of your company, right? But if you're not intending to get funding because you don't need it, you shouldn't really give a rat's ass about what your company valuation is, as long as it's profitable, as long as it's growing, and as long as you're keeping up with the market. Because we made this problem. We considered funding, and during that period that we considered it, all we were obsessed with was growth. Because, in order to get funding, you need to demonstrate we're growing so fast in the next 5 years, we're going to be this big, therefore we're worth this much money. So therefore, if I'm going to give you 10% of it, I want X million dollars or something like that. It's all voodoo mathematics and it's all an art. Everyone just kind of makes stuff up, but they confidently and comfortably do it just because it's kind of been set in stone, unfortunately, that funding is the path to success. Whereas when you think about it inherently, companies that receive funding, they're not necessarily looking for ways to grow a profitable business. All they're trying to do is hit certain growth targets so they can ask for more money their next round of funding. Versus if you start a business where you're able not to require upfront capital, it teaches you all the right things from an entrepreneurial perspective. You're chasing not revenue or users, you're chasing profit and margin, right? You're figuring out how to get your costs down, be lean. You'll do things that aren't scalable up front just to get the business in the right place, right? You will grow as you need to. You won't force it, which actually causes many products to fail because they try and, get ahead of the market in certain ways when they should be listening to their customers and organically changing it. And all of those things I think you can do without taking someone's money and growing at your own rate. And that's why we at Two Space did it that way, even though we considered funding at one point. But when we did consider funding, it was to try and strap a rocket ship to us in year 3 or 4 to see if we could grow really quickly, because we were like, what we're doing works, but if we go get this bag of money, maybe we could expand into the US as well. Yeah. But we kind of put that to bed very quickly because I realized that instead of focusing on the business for about almost half a year, my full-time job as one of the co-founders was literally investment packs, pitching to investors. I wasn't focused on the business at all. I was just chasing money when the right thing was right in front of me the whole time.
And from some of the people I've spoken to who either are looking for investment or have achieved investment, that part is almost a full-time job in itself. And perhaps sometimes a distraction from the actual business. And then you've got more opinions, more people to satisfy as part of the core business journey as well.
Yeah, I mean, and again, just reiterating, if funding is the path that you need to take it. If it works for you, great, but just know what you're getting yourself into.
What about moving on from a business? So for a lot of people, they have started the business and they've been doing it like yourself 6 years. And then there's more that perhaps whether it's ego, but they don't want to feel like they've failed.
Yeah.
But you've now transitioned into this great corporate role. How was that transition for you?
It wasn't easy at the start, which is why I like talking about it now to help anyone who's trying to do it. Because even though there are a lot of entrepreneurial skills you can transfer over, it's not like entrepreneurs are a godsend to corporate environments because they want big picture thinking and someone to steer a ship. It's 50-50. As someone coming into a corporate career or environment, you need to know how to embrace process, right, to a huge degree and make it work for you because you're part of a bigger ecosystem now. And this company has probably been around for decades in most cases, and it works for a reason. And because the brand has so much scale and impact, you can't be as nimble, and rightfully so. So if you can appreciate that and make it work for you, it'll work really well, because there's also ways for individuals who come into corporate careers, once they recognize what kind of company they're coming to work for, to leverage that brand for themselves as well. Because at the end of the day, whatever you do, especially if you come from a startup background, personal brand is worth its weight in gold, right? So it's almost like if you come into a corporate environment, you're doing a great job for them, you're helping them embrace, all of those entrepreneurial skills that you've got on the table, and I'll name a couple after this point. You should be also thinking about, okay, I'm attached to this really great global brand right now. Is there a way I can leverage it to build my network? Or is there a way I can leverage to have a voice on the platform of this industry, whether it be, doing cool stuff like really good conversations, or doing stuff like LinkedIn articles, or, I think we live in a very attention-driven economy right now. So should you be speaking to things like that to elevate your own profile? not to say because you're going to jump ship or anything, but if you're suddenly working for this company that gets value out of you, how do you get value out of that company aside from a salary and potentially a career? I think is really important. And I guess there's two things that really come to mind, which is not unique to any individual founder that comes from working within a startup that you can bring to your corporate career. The first one, and no one really thinks about it because it's not really a skill, but it's you just know how to juggle so many different moving parts. You know what I mean? So it's like the ability not to crumble under pressure is very, very important and valuable within a corporate environment, because unfortunately, unless you come from that place, a lot of people do submit to pressure within this I guess, world. So you being able to know that when you started your business, you were the CEO, you were the COO, you were the chief marketing person, you were dealing with operations, you were dealing with the launch, you do it all, doesn't mean that suddenly you're going to do it all in a corporate environment. But it means because you appreciate all those moving parts, you know how to manage them, or you know how to step in and all that kind of stuff. That is super invaluable. And then the second skill is just having this ability to identify problems or gaps or where the next potential kill is going to come from, you know? And that doesn't necessarily mean just for the sales founders or the salespeople out there. It could be even if you're a developer or a coder or a marketing person or an ops person, you're always you've got this like sniffing mentality out where you're just looking for you could be left alone and you will find something to do. You know what I mean? Whereas a lot of people don't do that because they're not taught that, which you can't really teach. It's almost just something that you do. Like you get ants in your pants to a degree. You know? Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Something that I do want to touch on before we go into our questions is you do have quite an interesting family background as well. And that's what I mentioned as we started this, to get an insight into, you know, the mentality of someone like yourself. Tell us a little bit about your family and some of the key people in it.
I mean, it almost feels made up, like... But I'm very, very fortunate and lucky, which is also a big factor that I tap into to help maintain drive and grit in certain situations. But from my dad's side, he's actually the first Tibetan that came to Australia, that immigrated here. He was also the Dalai Lama's, His Holiness's bodyguard, because they wouldn't allow weapons around him, and he was a black belt in Taekwondo. So when we were very young, little boys at home, we'd have this bald dude in robes meditating in our backyard, and I'd always be like playing Pokemon at the time on the Nintendo, going, "Who's that bald guy in that garden? What the hell?" But he was actually the Dalai Lama, so missed opportunity to kind of to learn some stuff from him while he was around. From my mum's side, she's Nepalese. She was the entrepreneur that brought chai tea to Australia. Cool story behind that. Long story short, there's still a food stall that we do every Saturday in Paddington Markets in her to uphold her legacy. We do Himalayan food. It's called the Himalayan cuisine. And at one of these festivals called the Big Day Out, like, you know, decades ago, the big music festival, we did food there, and there'd be lines of people, you know, like hundreds of people long almost. And to kind of keep them happy, she would brew chai and serve them all these little cups of chai in paper cups back then. And just one day happened to be the CEO of Gloria Jeans there going, "Oh, what's this?" And she's like, "It's chai tea, and any entrepreneurial bone I have in my body comes from her." She was like me times 100. And she figured out a brew that worked for Australia, and they launched it together. And then unfortunately that didn't take, because around the time that she passed away, the synthetic chai came out about 10 years ago. So we were, at the time, it was like $40 a kilo for natural chai, which is a brew of different teas and leaves. And then the synthetic powder was $10. So we just didn't have her amazing mind to compete with that and figure it out. So it just kind of went away, which is unfortunate. And then grandparents on my mum's side, they grew up in the circus. Yeah, Grandpa Maurice was the strongman. Helen, our grandma, late grandma, she was the trapeze artist. And that's how they met, because they were in the circus ever since they were little kids. Yeah.
Because I know it is a fascinating consideration, you know, with so many aspects of life, nature versus nurture. But I just can't help thinking, being brought up by those parents, the influence from your grandparents as well, that sparks this sort of entrepreneurial spirit in someone like yourself.
Yeah. I mean, once people find out I've got circus blood in me, they're like, that makes sense. But yeah, for sure.
But your granddad, he turned 100 this year, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
I mean, I would love him to be sat here.
Yeah.
I would ask him every question in the pack.
Yeah.
But what wisdom, if any, what wisdom has he passed on to you and your siblings?
I mean, an infinite amount without saying anything, even by example, right? He's the kind of man that you want to become. I want to become even half of when I grow up. Because when he did give his speech at his 100th, literally the only thing that he really emphasized and put pressure on was he didn't talk about people's careers. He didn't talk about money or houses or anything. He just kind of looked around and he was like, I'm just happy everyone's healthy. Everyone's, got families. That's all I can ask for. And he took his hat off in such a nice way. And he's like, and thank you all. And he's really happy because he's got such a big family now. Because he's got about seven children of his own, and they all had kind of our aunts and uncles, and they've all had kids. And so he's definitely still the strong man in our books. Yeah.
Amazing. And some good genes there as well to pass on.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see if I hit 100.
Wow. Well, fascinating. So, we could talk about all of those topics in even more depth.
Yeah.
But what I am going to jump into now is a couple of questions from our pack.
Cool.
So, question number 1. What was your favourite subject at school?
Oh, man. It's a toss-up between math and chemistry, actually. Math only because before it got really hard, because I wasn't like a math whiz, I just really enjoyed solving equations and problems in a weird way. Plus, I had an awesome teacher back then. Chemistry, just because we got to do so many experiments in the class, so many weird things. That's probably it, actually.
The old Bunsen burner.
Yeah, just messing around with stuff was really fun and fascinating to me, and me just seeing all these different reactions that you can mess around with, yeah.
Were you someone who conformed at school or perhaps had, again, itchy feet whilst you were at school?
No, I did not exhibit any real entrepreneurial behavior back then. I was, pretty vanilla. Although what I did used to do, which actually is kind of the startup, is I used to buy like slabs of Coke from Woolies or Coles for like 50 cents a can or whatever it was, and then resell them for $1 because at school, because they're like $1.20 from the vending machines. Until I got busted by the teachers because I wasn't allowed to do that. But I did that for a while. And then what I used to do when my dad would travel, I'd ask him to buy all the Tamagotchis from Singapore because he would travel a lot for like $20, and because you couldn't get it from Australia, I'd resell them for like $50. And so maybe a little bit of that.
There's a few little things out there to, be testing things. Question number 2. Who has had the biggest influence on your life?
I'd probably say, Mum still. Mum, even late Mum, because she, even when I was young, like the stuff that she would always say this to me, actually, like when I was even before high school, she'd be like, read the question properly. She'd always like help me study for exams, but I'd always see her do very startup-y stuff because back then there wasn't the word entrepreneur or anything, but she was out there hustling the food store. She'd be jumping on radio stations because they'd like her to hear her perspective. She was doing the chai thing, always super bubbly and lovely. Everyone knew her. Everyone loved her. So just seeing the energy that she'd bring and how she'd light up a room really, I guess, impacted my subconscious in a healthy way.
Yes.
And even now, because like a lot of the times I'm like, I wonder what she think about this, or how am I doing, Mum, and all that kind of stuff. So definitely she's up there. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Because obviously, there's so many key people that have been part of your journey. Yeah. So that is lovely to hear. And question number 3. What is the biggest misconception people have about you?
That I'm an extrovert.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not even, and my wife would argue with me on this one, but I really I can turn it on when I need to, and I have to do it for work a lot, and I'm doing YouTube and all this stuff. So you'd feel like, this bloody guy can't get enough of his own voice. But when I'm not doing that stuff or switched on, I just want to be at home with my dogs and not. So I'm rarely out socially. It's like it's only work related stuff or things that I get really into.
This final question that I like to ask all of our guests is, if you could ask any person, dead or alive, a question, who would it be and what would you ask them?
That one's an easy one for me. It'd be Mum for sure. And it literally would be, how am I doing? Like, are you happy with what's going on? Because she unfortunately left us when I was like 15 or something. And I'm like 30, 36 going on 37 now. So all of the cool stuff you would argue that, I'm doing now, she, can see, can't see or whatever. So I kind of check into that. That would be it. Because that's what fuels me most of the time. It's kind of like making sure what I'm doing is standing right by, family and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the answer for me.
That's amazing. And I'm sure she would be very impressed. Thank you so much for your time today. Lastly, how can people connect with you, find out a little bit more about you?
I think I'm really just on 2 platforms, which is LinkedIn. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I will answer any messages, because I already do. Like, I get a bunch of people hit me up for stuff, and I'm always happy to give you my thoughts. So you can jump on my LinkedIn, or right now where I'm pouring a lot of my side time is the YouTube channel. I've made myself a promise, which I told you last time. It's only like a month old now, but I've promised myself to do it for a year with no excuse of, put a video out a week without any expectation of anyone watching it or whatnot, but also not put crap out. So I think about what I want to do and do that. So that's probably a good place to go.
Brilliant. Well, I can't wait to see how it turns out and what your next adventures will be in the years to come, because I think, you've got certainly a lot to offer people. So thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. This has been heaps fun.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to check out the show notes for more information on today's guests. And if really good conversations are your thing, hit subscribe and join us next time for more business journeys, insights and banter.